Do we have 6?
Do I?
And Sarah's about to log in.
Okay, because I only see 5. Maybe I'm missing somebody.
So
wait.
Lucy, Catherine, Karen, Michael, and Lisa are all
Okay.
on.
Cool.
Sarah's
So,
about to join, and Helen just joined.
okay. Perfect. Okay, let's call the meeting to order then. Let's see. Okay. So does anybody have any citizen comments?
Hi, Helen. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm experimenting with 2 different computers, doing 2 different things to see if I could be on the webcam. So far it's working.
We see you.
If I start screeching, holler.
Okay. No, yeah, your sound is way better than it has been before. It's easy to understand you.
Oh, good, good.
Yeah.
Wait, where is it? I can't figure out where my camera is. All right.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments? I have a comment actually. Carolyn, I use like the, what is it? The like mobile portal or whatever, the citizens portal last week.
311.
Okay.
I don't know, like, so I submitted something and I don't think you get anything back saying like, this has been submitted, like a work order has been generated, this work order has been closed or anything. And I just wasn't sure if like there was a way to do that, like that ties it into an existing system just to notify whoever submitted it. So it doesn't feel like your request is like going into a black hole.
Yeah, actually, I just double checked and I didn't receive one from you. Hold on.
So we were hiking on, or we were just walking on the granite gravel trail down Jones Road, and there were ants swarming on this bench. So I submitted a request, but then like the next, like I've never seen it since. So it was like, oh, I wonder if they took care of it, or the ants just disappeared, or what.
Let me look real quick. I'm gonna pull up Mobile 311 and I'll see, because
Sure.
I didn't receive anything.
Okay, that was like.
Where were you at when you did you geotag it? Was it gonna be
No, I didn't have my phone with me, so I did it when I got home. And I know I can't remember if I did it from my phone or computer, but I knew that I had trouble logging in before.
Yeah, because I just double checked. I would look through and I hadn't received any citizen requests for a while.
Okay.
So if you log back in, you should be able to see. Right, there it is. I didn't get it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
hold on. I'm gonna go and see what I'm gonna have to see what the status is on that.
Okay.
Actually, I need to see who it went to, because I should get all Mobile 311. So I need to see what the assignment was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me look into that. And what should happen is that you should be able to log back in and get it should update and say completed or something like that when you log back in.
Okay.
But I could see about sending out an email on those too, but that's weird. Let me go and look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Don't you normally get an email that says it's been submitted and that the number that's assigned to it?
Yes. And that's what's weird, that I didn't get an email from that. I might have to check into that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I asked. I think it's resolved anyway. I think like the ants moved on, but.
Right.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or anything?
Only that it's super upsetting when you see a massive amount of ants swarming.
We were gonna suggest, I don't think they're even ants. They were ants with wings. So I'm sure, like, are they termite? I don't know what they were, but
It can be upsetting.
it was not very inviting. Come sit with us. Okay, I guess. Catherine, you didn't have your hand raised, did you? Okay. I guess we're ready to go on to the meeting minutes from June 22nd.
Who's in control of the screen?
I am. Let me bring him up real quick.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we have a report? We have the minutes, but we have the next meeting steps. Can we find out, is there some way to find out if anything has been moved forward on this? Like we've got reestablishing the suspended program. So someone to tell us, okay, they've all gone to the Budget and Finance Committee and they, well, for instance, let's see.
I mean, I think we're going to talk about that a little in Karen's brief. Is that right, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay, so Karen, you can tell us whatever's on the in the minutes. You can tell us where we are and what we suggested to the council and to the finance committee.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So we're still in the minutes, right?
Yeah, we're still looking at the minutes.
So far, it's looking good to me. I think we also reviewed it at the end of the meeting, so
Yeah.
just like double redundancy.
Yeah.
I have an off-topic question.
Sure, Helen.
Well, I went through all this to try to get me on the webcam, and I saw me for a few minutes, and now I'm not there. Can y'all see me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, can you see yourselves?
Yes.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
It might,
Well, I'm just wondering why I can't see myself anymore.
I think you might be able to choose like how you view other people, and depending on who you're viewing, it might omit people. I don't know. I get them all mixed up.
Okay, well, I'll
You might have X'd yourself out in the upper right corner of your little Brady Bunch square.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm trying to work with two different mics here.
Maybe go to everyone and then view everyone across the top.
Okay, sorry. While y'all are still doing the minutes. Okay, now I'm in. You're saying in that box because I have the attendees on the right.
Mhm.
No, on the right, for me, right above the Brady Bunch grid of all the people, it says
Yeah.
everyone, webcams, Zoom and screenshot, if you click everyone, it's a little drop down. Just to view everyone.
Let me see if I can find it. No, I'm looking. You know, my screen is also very small, so I have to kind
I'm going to take a screen grab and text it to you.
of, okay, thank you.
Are we ready to move on to the next page of the minutes?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, Catherine made the motion. Do we have a second? I'll second. Oh, Michael, did you second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. Okay. And then if nobody has any questions, we can type our vote in the chat box. Oops. Okay. All right. Do we want to read out the votes?
Sure, hold on just a second. So Lisa, aye. Sarah, aye. Neska, aye. Zoe, aye. Michael, aye. Lucy, yes. Colin, yes. Everyone's in favor.
Perfect.
You figure it out, Helen?
Well, I got to that little purple blossom and I clicked on that and it's making me go to training and whatnot to open up in full screen, and that's what I'm trying to do. It's very slow. Let's see if that makes a difference.
Okay, so I think next on the agenda is Karen's report.
Okay. So let's see, lots going on. There were some residents on Lone Oak that approached City Council concerned about the parking for access to the trail on Lone Oak and the amount of cars that are parking and things that are going on with people parking to enter the trail there. Suggested some options. Where it stands right now is the residents are supposed to get together and come back with what they'd like to see, from what I remember. Apparently there's 3 trail entrances there, and there's some discussion about reducing that to 1 trail entrance. And hold on, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
At the interference here. So that's going to come back to council. There's a suggestion about putting a sign there that says parking for the trail is at City Hall. Another option would be permits for residents to park there, and then no parking for non-residents. So there's a few options floating around. We've asked the residents to come back with a consensus. Let's see. Then going into some of the items from our last meeting, Wanda, as far as the fire protection and the wildfire mitigation, Wanda directed this committee, Public Works and PD, to review the wildfire protection plan and come back to council with recommendations. The plan was last reviewed apparently in 2012, and it's supposed to be reviewed and updated every 2 years.
Okay.
So that's on our agenda for tonight, and a copy was included. Then on our request for or ranking of the programs that we wanted to see come back, right now, all of those items, ours and other ones that have popped up either through budget and finance or public works, are going in what's being called a parking lot. And so they'll be on the parking lot and in hold basically until we figure out what's happening with sales tax revenue and the revenues that we collect. Because we're still dealing with COVID and still dealing with closures, there's a tendency, budget and finance is really just sticking to the bronze budget. So that's, essential services only. When and if different programs come back, that's going to, I believe, be an ongoing review of the parking lot things. The other thing that as part of that evaluation for council is going to be, I think, is going to be the cost of service that Sylvia has been putting together, and Carolyn, on, what does it really cost to do this service, provide this service, staff time, how much staff time capacity is left, and if we don't have staff to do a project, what alternatives do we have? Contracting, volunteers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that'll all go into the mix as those parking lot issues are evaluated. But right now things are pretty tight. We had a discussion at the end of the council meeting, just an open discussion about COVID recovery, and the majority, I think it was the majority of the council members didn't feel like they wanted to touch reserves. Just in thinking there might be a second wave in the fall of COVID and not wanting to dip into reserves sooner than we need to. On the other hand, the Budget and Finance Committee has said they're comfortable with tapping reserves. So we'll see where that all ends up. But right now things are pretty strict into the focus on the bronze budget, essential services only. Let's see. Oh, the one thing on the other item on our minutes from last, the solid waste recommendation that we made, y'all made to increase the cost of solid waste. Budget and Finance actually agreed with that. So that was interesting. I'm not sure if
what about some of the other fees, Karen?
none of those have been discussed.
Okay.
That's all in the parking lot. But solid waste, they did talk about water and wastewater, but they felt more comfortable with looking at the solid waste and increasing those fees. It's a simpler increase rather than going into the different scales. They might end up doing that, but right now that's kind of where they are, and that's where they ended at their last meeting. And I think that's all I have to report, unless you guys have questions.
I have a
Karen.
question. I can't remember if we talked about it, but did we ever, was the uplands ever assessed or whatever? I can't remember, COVID happened. Like, I don't remember anything that happened.
Do an appraisal, right, Zoe?
Yeah. Yes, the appraisal or.
I don't believe that went forward. Sylvia might be able to address that. I haven't heard anything come to council.
It hasn't come to council yet because we've only gotten a portion of it back. So we have an appraisal for the big piece as one, and then we have an appraisal for the two pieces as one. We haven't gotten the second part of the appraisal that has the uplands and that triangular piece where the farmer's market is on Saturday. So that's about 2 weeks out. And I'm still reviewing the first one that we got just to make sure everything is kosher. I'm not necessarily sure this was a great time to appraise because, some commercial property I thought was going to go for a lot more than it did around us, but here we are.
Yeah.
I did want to make note on the budget. There is an iContact that went out today about the Budget and Finance Committee for Thursday. And in there, in OpenGov, there's a link called Budget Development in Progress.
Oh.
And that shows everything that we've been inputting thus far. It's the same sheets that the committee gets, except it's in OpenGov. And it has the ability for you to drill down into some very, very specific information. So I would encourage everybody to take a look at it. You can also, from the dashboard, you can send us a question and say, hey, I don't understand this. And it'll tell me exactly what dashboard you were on so I can, you know, kind of get an idea of what your question is. But Karen's right. We are on a pretty austere bronze budget. Everybody's hopeful that revenues are going to pick up. And so the parking lot becomes really, really important in terms of phasing things back in. On Thursday, the Budget and Finance Committee is also going to discuss the reserve policy, because our reserve policy right now says 12 months of operating reserves. And obviously, if we bring our operating budget down, then we have more than enough reserves and there's like a surplus there. But not knowing what will happen in the next 12 to 18 months, I'll be visiting that. It's financial policy FP 103, I believe.
And Helen has her hand up.
Hi, Helen. What's your question?
Did you submit the feedback?
Yeah, it's a little, the sound's not as good as it was before, but I think we can understand you.
I just turned off my other computer, thinking that might help.
It was better before. It was way better before.
It was. Do you have a comment or a question, or are you just wondering about the sound? I just don't want to.
I didn't hold my hand up. I didn't think. Anyway, yeah.
Oh,
just keep going forward.
Okay.
I have to.
Looks like
Catherine, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to check in on one other thing that was an action item from the previous minutes. Zoe, you and Carolyn and Sylvia and Karen, I think we're going to look at the services and programs that are currently active but at a diminished capacity. To look at that list. I didn't know if that's something you guys had a chance to do yet. I've been really curious about our services that are considered essential, so they would be in the bronze. However, perhaps they're only being performed at a diminished capacity that might create problems for us in the future, and whether those bronze level services that are considered essential should be fully in service, you know, if they're considered an essential service. Am I making sense here? Like, if it's something essential in its normal capacity, but it's only done in a diminished capacity now, are we performing the full essential service?
right. Yeah. And that did come, it was on the discussion for council, but since it was item number 15 of our council agenda, it was at the very last part of our meeting. And so we didn't get too deep into the discussion and did not actually look at that specifically.
Is it coming on future agendas, or?
I would think it's, we're going to have to address it, yes. What agenda it's going to be on, I'm not sure, because even the next agenda is pretty packed.
Okay. I was just curious about that piece, especially if you guys had put the time into that.
And I mean, we did have a meeting like shortly after our meeting, right? We had like a small breakout session. So we did revisit it, but it's been a while and I cannot remember like the outcome of it. Are you concerned about like any specific service, Catherine, or just the whole idea that we have this essential services that's not like completely maxed out?
Yeah, just wondering how that kind of gets thought of when it's considered essential, but perhaps it's not being done fully. Are there any risks associated with that? You know, thinking about things like wildfire risk, or you know.
The wildfire one is one that I specifically put on the agenda because that was one we were very concerned about. And that's where we were asked to review the wildfire protection plan and come back with a recommendation. That was the one we actually did talk about. The rest of them that are active but at a reduced rate, we did not get into all of those in council.
Okay.
So just some information on the background. So one of the things the Budget and Finance Committee has asked is a comparative, and so council is going to ask for the same thing. So if we say we need 2 additional people to do all of those essential or limited essential, what is the cost of contracting that out? And I've gotten some estimates back. It's probably another week until we get a what I call a pencil sharpened. But my focus right now is making sure that the staff has the Class C water licenses. What I want us all to think about is in the whole scheme of things, there's a lot of stuff we can contract out, but providing clean water, we can only do that on a limited basis. So I want to rethink our public works department, and not that a pesticide license isn't important, but a Class C water license is more important. And then creating really strong generalists within the department so that we have that teamwork that Carolyn needs to be able to cross and pull people as she needs them without having to go argue with another supervisor. But it's also, if we end up contracting some of this stuff out, what's the return on investment for our residents? You know, what do we lose in terms of connection and community? And then also, is the contract something Carolyn can manage, or, you know, does that fall somewhere else or to me? Or so, you know, there's a lot of moving parts, but one of the first things folks are going to ask is, well, how much is it going to cost us to do that if we want to go back to brush grinding, you know, 15 times a year, whatever amount I'm making up. But wildfire, yeah, that one is very, very high on the list.
Okay, and Neshka, I think I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I had just had a question about kind of council not wanting to use reserve funds. I just was wondering, did you get the vibe that it was like general fund reserves, or even like, you know, kind of like specific fund reserves, like the green fund reserves? Like, because I know that there's general fund and then there's other funds, and I know we've talked about like using the green fund reserves and other things. Like, is it just reserves across the board, or mostly general reserve, you think?
I think most of the discussion really was about general fund.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Most of the other funds have a drawdown of some sort, whether we're drawing down for a project like we do in streets, or whether we're drawing down for operations like we're going to have to do in crime control, or if we're drawing down in green for a combination project program kind of thing. Most of the, because sales tax has taken a dip, most of the funds have a draw on what should have been a reserve balance.
So that's kind of factored into the bronze budget, is already that drawdown on the reserves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody is really concerned about the general fund one now. Because, for example, crime control, this will be the only year they can draw down reserve. There won't be any additional. If police doesn't cut back and we don't see an increase in revenues, the next year, there's no crime control piece to take it out of. It's going to have to come from the general fund. And so it's the same thing with the utility subsidies across the board, is what we're contributing does draw down to some extent, and then also really charging the funds exactly what they're supposed to charge, like Carolyn being able to put when we work on streets within the street budget. But hopefully we don't have 18 more months of this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it doesn't look like anybody else has any comments or questions.
I just want to say thanks to Karen for pushing the Firewise stuff with council. It's much appreciated. And we just like, I just can't even stress how important that is. When it gets dry and it just gets so scary. I think we're all thinking about that right now.
The time of year.
There were also a lot of fireworks this year that went off in Sunset Valley that had me super worried about fire and wildlife, and yeah. So thanks, Karen.
You bet.
All right, Carolyn, are you ready for your update?
Sure, yeah, let me start off. You guys may have seen today, we had some activity in the city on the streets. They were crack sealing a lot of the city streets throughout the area. And then we also had a crew, they were out on Oakdale today doing the annual kind of cammering, and they clean and send a camera down the sewer lines. And that's just, these are just preventative maintenance items that help us to, keep on top of things and make sure the roads last longer, that there's no problems with the wastewater lines. They'll be finishing up a couple other sections of the line probably tomorrow and continuing on with some of the crack sealing. They'll probably be on Brody tomorrow, so that's a bigger street that they'll be on, and they'll have like a moving kind of lane closure on Brody as they go along. The other thing I was going to talk about is Valley Creek Park erosion project is done. They have all the erosion control blankets are in, so now we're just pretty much waiting for plants to grow and re-veg the area. So you can see the before right here on, it should be on your left, where the entire back of the gabion kind of had washed out basically. And then you see the after where we put the new gabions in to hold that whole section of the, and it looks really large on there, but it's not as big as it seems, I guess. But it is a really good thing. And actually, I've got more photos. I can kind of go through some of these, how they did the whole project, getting in there and tying it all together. They moved really fast. It took them 7 days, actually. They started on Monday, and they were done by the next Tuesday, putting in everything. And so they did a really good job and were really easy to work with. And so, yeah, those are the things I wanted to update the committee on, and if there's any questions on any other activities.
What's the situation with the pond? The pond by City Hall and the Public Works
by City Hall?
Yeah.
So they're doing a couple different things with the pond. They put another polymer product in it to see if they can seal any other potential cracks with this polymer product. It's literally a product called Damn It. We weren't making that up. That's actually the name. So they put that in. They were keeping the water level kind of high just to give that product time to settle. Excuse me. And then they were sending a camera, similar to what we were doing with the wastewater lines. Actually, it's the same company. Sending a camera up the storm sewer lines to check some stuff out in that area. They were able to get through the line from the pond to PD because it's a pretty straight shot. They ran into a little bit of a snag of the line that goes from the pond to Public Works because the pond makes a couple turns. The line makes a couple turns, and it makes it they couldn't get the camera through some of those turns. And so, but they also found something that was kind of looked like a potential gap or something in that area. So they were going to have to open it up anyhow. So they opened up a part of the pipe, and should be sending the camera back through the remainder of the line. So that's you can see over there, I think they have a little backhoe and stuff and some work that's happening over by the pond. So that's what that is right there, where they're investigating that line.
The long and short is the top portion of the pond is working, sort of. It's 95% doing what it's supposed to do. The bottom portion of the pond, which is what we said we wanted to be able to store water and re-irrigate, is not holding.
Yeah, still not.
Okay. So we joined the community garden, and there's a Facebook group, and Cindy was saying that she saw some black-bellied whistling ducks at the pond. Like, there have been a lot of ducks at the pond. So I thought that was cool.
They're beautiful. They are so beautiful. We went over there yesterday, and it was so cool. There's so many birds right now. It was really cool. But they were flying and they were huge. It was super cool.
Cool.
There was I almost took it. I didn't have my phone with me, or I would have taken a picture. But it was so cute. It was and on top of the police building too. They were just everywhere. It was super cool.
That is cool. And then Carolyn, Catherine, I saw you have your hand raised. I just want to ask one question really fast. Like we were walking one evening and by the pond, there's like there's a light and it was like flashing red. And I was like, I wonder if I should tell someone about that. And then I went home and I completely forgot about it. Is there anything that we need to watch out for? Like, did something?
If you ever, no, it's the pump that hooks to the irrigation system basically, and it will periodically go off. If you can always it doesn't have a call out box, but you can always give me a call or something and say, hey, Carolyn, the pond's flashing red. And generally we just go in and you just hit a reset button and it restarts the whole thing. So yeah, if you ever see that, you can always give me a call and say that it's happening, and it's like I said, it's a pretty easy thing to kind of go in and check out.
Okay, cool. All right, Catherine, you had a question, right? Or a comment?
Yeah, did I read that there was a member of the public works staff who tested positive for COVID? I was just wondering if there have been any staffing impacts for you, Carolyn.
We did have a member of Public Works who tested positive. We did bring in a couple of temps to kind of help bridge that gap and during that time. So it did have a little bit of an impact because there's so few of us but we were able to bring in some of the, actually one of the employees who had been laid off came in through the temp agency, and then another employee who had been an intern before came in and helped out.
Okay.
Oh, that's good. I hope you stay healthy.
Yeah.
He's all good now. He's back.
Oh, good. Good. I'm so glad to hear that. That was my only question.
Thank you. I think there's an echo. Aneshka, I see, like, were you just saying hi, or do you have a comment?
I was waving at Helen. Sorry.
Hang up.
I'm not sure what's going on with the echo.
I think Helen's trying to call in. I think I might have given her bad advice because I think she needs to turn off her audio on the computer and call in on the phone. Yeah, and that's what the feedback was. I mean,
Helen, did you hear it?
Audio.
Aneshka, you want to try again?
Are we okay? Whoever I'm talking to.
I'm fine. I've got nothing. I was just waving at Helen. I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I misunderstood you. Okay, I think we're ready to move on. I don't think anybody has anything else. Okay.
I think Helen was trying to speak on her phone.
Is that possible? Yeah, yes, we can hear you, Helen.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Did you want to say anything, Helen?
Sorry, no, I was just trying to get in the meeting.
Oh,
but I
that's
guess
great.
I'm in.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, should we just go through it page by page?
Did Liz Carolyn?
What was that?
Did you want to go through the wildfire plan page by page?
Sure, if you guys want to do that, we can go through and you guys can tell me what it is and I'll put in comments and different things like that.
Sure. Can you make it look a little bigger? I don't know if anyone else is having trouble seeing it. I'm just looking at your screen instead of having it open separately.
I had a quick question before we start on this. I was reading through this earlier. Carolyn, will you have the information about, there were a lot of action items in here in this original plan of things that were supposed to be done. Do you kind of know what has been done and what has not been done? Because I feel like that might help guide us if there were things that still haven't even been completed from this.
Yes, I should know, especially anything that happened out in the green spaces. That's going to be things that I would know. So it should be.
So how are we going to go through this? Are we going page by page, or is there any specific information the committee wants to go directly to?
I mean, how many pages is it? 25, like
25.
I guess what do we need to, is there like a table of contents, or should we just be looking at the goals?
I would think looking at the goals and any kind of specific activities and looking at those and what we need to take off or add on.
Okay, I guess let's start there. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to look at this before our meeting, so.
So can you go back to the goals, Carolyn? So one of the goals was supporting the Austin Fire Department by identifying risk, appropriate training, and maintaining critical fire suppression infrastructure. One of the things that, and goal 1, lives and property, one of the things that was raised is our updated list of our at-risk population who are going to need evacuation assistance in time of a fire. And this was raised. This was raised at the Stearns rezoning issue. But in my prior city, we had agreements with nursing homes and residents and family of those residents who we knew lived alone and would need help. And so they were our first round of going to pick them up. We have a list the chief keeps. It's an impromptu list. Just, you know, the folks that have worked at Sunset Valley for so long, they know who needs help. They know who doesn't need help, who's with their children. But we need something a little bit more formal and a mechanism to be able to add to that list if it's so needed as we age, or as maybe somebody in our population became ill and is no longer able to completely care for themselves. So that we need to work that into this portion. And then the other thing that's important to work into this portion is the council has asked us to begin looking at impact fees. So we're going to put together an impact fee committee. Well, one of the things impact fees is able to pay for is fire protection. So in all of our development, I don't know if we've ever asked people to put in fire hydrants, if we've ever asked for people to do certain things. Austin Fire Rescue does do plan review, and they do call out when a fire hydrant is needed, right? But if we have a more stringent standard, they would have to meet our standard. So fire hydrants are usually placed between 300 and 500 feet of each other, depending on water pressure. If we have very highly susceptible areas, we may want to go to 250. We may want to go to something that's a little bit more aggressive. So those are things for us to consider as we move forward. Not just a goal of reducing, but how do we execute that reduction?
Are there different needs for commercial areas versus, like, when we're talking about fire hydrants in developed areas, like where are we just talking about the entire city as a whole, or specific spots where we're most concerned?
Well, I used to joke that in the commercial areas, because they're sprinklered, the fire department should really just show up and mop up. But that's not the case, especially in areas where, like for us, that the commercial backs up to very heavily wooded green belts that could catch fire quickly and spread. And so what we put in as buffers also become dangerous areas for us. So those are things to consider. Yes, every area has a different fire need. The more dense the area, the more hydrants you should have. But in Sunset Valley, we have such large open spaces too, natural open spaces, that almost applies to us as well. I mean, it's in the normal rural environments, you could have a fire hydrant, you know, one every 500 feet or 750 feet, depending on water pressure and a water tank. We shouldn't do that in Sunset Valley. We shouldn't do that. One, our streets are very narrow, so when the fire truck comes in, he shouldn't have to hurry up and look for a hydrant. And then two, our turnarounds, if they miss the hydrant or they have to do the hose lay or something like that, we should give ample opportunity for fire suppression.
Do any of our current cutbacks affect, because I know that they had mentioned that, Carolyn had mentioned that they weren't doing any work in the Greenbelt right now. Are there any areas there that might be fire-wise to come in there and mow or not let get overgrown? Like, I'm wondering, are there long-term extra costs to cutting services now and then having to come back in and do like extra work later?
So for sure, especially, yeah, for sure, especially if we're going to have to, you know, we could have taken care of something and then later on let it get so bad that now I need extra trailers or extra mulching or extra capacity. They're doing bare minimum. I wouldn't say we haven't touched any of the green spaces. We're doing just absolutely bare minimum. And so one of the contracts I've been going through is our Texascape contract. And how can he do it, his ability to do it and what that cost would be. And then I have to couple that with, I mean, you guys saw the cost of service sheet. There isn't any more room for the current staff to do it. We're maxed out in terms of time. So the other part to that is if that means staff, then one of two things happens. You guys know everything else kind of falls further, which it should. Wildfire should be first, followed closely by flood. But you know, I always have that that yin and yang. I always have that other group of folks who thinks, you know, something is just as important. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be talking through as we talk through the budget. But wildfire has ranked really high, which is one that said, hey, if it's so important, why haven't we visited it since 2012?
Right. Helen, did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, this is just a comment about the earlier one on the fire hydrants. I remember when they were putting fire hydrants down on Oakdale, there was some concern by the fire department that the homes were set so far back that they didn't have long enough hoses to even get to the homes. And
wow.
I don't know if that was all resolved, but I think that's something we need to look at as well to make sure that the hoses can reach us.
Absolutely, because every time you stretch that hose an extra 100 feet, you lose water pressure. And so there are some sections of the International Residential Code that after a house gets to be so big and is so far that it really requires the house to be sprinkled or have some alternate fire suppression standard. In reviewing some of our plans, I can see some of the houses are way back and it's going to take more than a 500-foot hose to get there. And so that's when you'll see the fire department bring in a pumper truck to initially suppress and then try to get that. Well, by the time the pumper truck gets deployed, you know, you've lost critical minutes. So one of the things here is to ensure that when we're looking at those deep lots, that we are requesting an on-site, you know, it's going to be a private hydrant. And yes, there's going to be some plumbing expense to the homeowner, but the expense to not require it puts everybody else at risk.
So I would just add on to that one of the recent houses on Oakdale, probably one of the more recent builds that is it is outside of that distance, it is really far from the street. They either have a sprinkler system or they have an alternative water supply for that house. So any new builds have been required to do that. And also on the plan, although the plan hasn't been reviewed since 2012, we've still been working on wildfire mitigation activities. We still have been doing the the fire breaks and everything like that in the green spaces over the last several years.
What required the new house to have the alternative sprinkler system? Like, is it in, like, I'm still confused about all the different regulations and codes and stuff. So what was the driver behind that?
The house is too far from the street, and it wouldn't have fire flow to be able to control a fire at the house. So the house it's really far from the street.
Right, but is there like an ordinance or something, or like what legal requirements drove that, or just like telling them, you know, like there's no way that a fire truck would be able to reach
No,
you?
it's in our fire protection code. It's an NFPA standard, and that's a City of Austin and a City of Sunset Valley requirement.
Got it. Okay. Do we ever, so we have like a new fire department, right? Do we ever do like walkthroughs or anything with them? Do they ever come to communities to assess them or anything like that? Like, would they know they need a pumper truck before they come out?
They were here. You have a new person that just came on board. The person that always dealt with us before and did our plan review, he retired. So we do have a new City of Austin contact. The fire station on Brody is also moving. And so that's going to become an administration office for some fire and some other city staff. So I'm not sure geographically where our next closest fire station is going to be now, but I want that incorporated into this plan. I want us to think that if now the fire station is even further, what standards do we need to be looking at within the land development code, and what standards should we be looking at to address those distance requirements, knowing that the fire departments may take a little bit longer.
And when we developed this plan, we did have the fire department come out and go. We drove all around and looked at all kinds of different parts of the city and checked different. We drove through the green spaces. We drove through streets. And I think the new fire station is going to be over by Travis Country.
Yep.
In that area.
Yes.
Okay. Alfonso, did you have a comment?
Yeah, if it's possible. Yeah. Okay. I think that at this moment they are talking about very important point. And when I say about very important point, it's true that they were working in 2012 with this plan, but all of these plans, they have to continue. So in this case, for the wildfire, I remember in 2011, I was working for the city of Bastrop. And in Tahitian Village, one tree was touching some cables, electrical cables, and that started the fire. That tree went down to the water station. So we have no water in Tahitian Village because for that. So little by little was moving and in different areas. So here, some people, sometimes they believe that will never pass. And I remember last year when we were talking about money and we were talking about Home Depot, then they said, no, we never will have problems. Only if we will have fire in Home Depot and we don't have that revenue, and we will have problems. But we don't believe that we will have that. Well, at this moment we have problems. And with the fire, then I try to say, it's a little different with this city. Remember that in 2007, they removed the old town, or the first part of the town that they used to have the well. The well has problems because they don't have that we call elevator tank. When you have one tank that is above 80 feet, you have water with pressure. So the boosters that we have, they couldn't cover fire protection. After 2007, we are with the city. The city of Austin, they bring the water from West Lake on the hills. So they have the water plant and we have plenty pressure and plenty water. What is the problem? In the city distribution system, we don't have lines that they will loop. So when we say loop, in one moment you will have water coming from Brody, you will have water coming from 290, and you will have water coming from West Gate, and all of them in one moment they are together. At this moment, no, only you have feedings, but not through the city as a loop. If we will have that, we will have, if we are doing at this moment loop lines with all of that, the city will have plenty water and plenty pressure in all the places. It's true. In Oakdale, at this moment, at the end, you will have less and less pressure because only you have one diameter of pipe. So they will have problems in some areas on Oakdale. But it's the same in other areas because you have no plenty water. Now, looking all of that, we need to do one study then how we can do that looping, and we need to ask to the city of Austin because all of that is with a program, and that programs, they will work with pressure. So they can do that, the engineers. But if you will see at this moment, in this study, you will see in page number 15. In page number 15, from the wildfires study, they are talking about, let me see, they are talking about situation, summary, and risks. If you will see situation, summary, and risk, that is 4.0, page 15, that gave it to us the picture that we have 12 years in 2012 and we have now. It's true. The streets, they are 18 feet wide, 20 feet wide. So when you have a big truck, they cannot go inside. But we have pipes. The pipes, they are underground, and the pipes and the fire hydrants, this is that they can protect us. This is a different view than start thinking that the fire department, we need to call them. We need to use our lines. And this is why first try to look that summary of risk, and you will see first education. So we have to continue with that education, and we don't need to put fingers then before they were doing good or bad. We have to do that. So this is something that we live with that, the historical behavior, potential life. So at this moment, we are not talking essential. So we can put money because it's essential. This is life. If we will have fire, it's possible that we will have some people, then I hope that they don't lose their life. But this is very, very critical. And not because for 8 years after they have that study, we don't have problems. That doesn't mean that tomorrow we can have something that I don't want. So please, my suggestion is they can do one study and we can do that planning. At this moment in Public Works, maybe 3 months ago, Caroline, she remembered that, and Sylvia, this is the one topic that was talking about the fire hydrants, the capacity of each fire hydrant. So they were checking the capacity. We know these fire hydrants. So now, why not with the engineers, we start looking one project, if we are agree, and we propose that, because it will be much better to work with lines, water lines, than the streets we cannot do wider. We cannot build roads. So this is my suggestion. And in order to close this, I think that sometimes the same that yesterday, the last Thursday, that they were talking about solid waste. I think that this committee is very, very important. And when we are talking about revenues, we still with the green tax or venue tax, then is still with money. So we have money. So it doesn't mean that we need to go to general fund and revenues from general fund. We have some
Alfonso, can I interrupt you here? Because that's one of the purposes of this meeting, is to discuss what the action items are for fire safety that our committee wants to recommend. So we will definitely get to that, since we do have the green tax fund. We might be able to help and assist with that. And I think you raise a great point. But that is actually one of the purposes of this meeting right now. And perhaps that means we're going to make recommendations on what type of foliage is the most flammable, and maybe we want to control that. Or, you know, what would the environmental and planning committee want to do in terms of controlling maybe homeless encampments in the Greenbelt? Because, you know, we're talking about forming a nature watch committee later, and like, so that is actually the whole purpose of the meeting. So why don't we just continue and make some agenda items to move forward with for this?
Okay, thank you for explaining to me that.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining to me that. The only thing that I would like to say, Lisa, is that if some committees, they have some ideas, I think that this committee, they need to pursue with this idea, because it's the same with the Rangers.
Yeah, but some of the stuff you're talking
I'm sorry,
about
Lisa.
is more public work. And so let's put it back to Zoe to say, you know, what do we want to propose to City Council that planning and environmental thinks should be a part of this plan?
Yeah.
And then pipe size is public works, you know, street size, that's public works, you know, we can't really, that's a little outside of our purview.
Thank you, Zoe, and thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you, Alfonso. Like this, we're having a good discussion. I just wanted to point out, Helen brought up something. And Helen, I know you have your hand raised. I just wanted to say, or I thought you did at least. You pointed out that as part of the wildfire plan, could we ask that a new survey be done of all the streets, like the distance from fire hydrants, as far as like the safety of residents and whether or not they can really get accurate pressure and stuff. And I don't know what other surveys are part of the plan. And I'm not sure like if part of updating the plan is reevaluating all the surveys, Carolyn, like if there's even staff to do that right now, or how that will work.
I think, I mean, we can definitely look at some of those items and see what we can do, and what we'll need to, you know, gather some other resources to maybe do. But we can definitely do that. And I just wanted to real quick before we go on address, Alfonso, this item will be on the Public Works agenda tomorrow night as well. So you'll get a chance to, we'll get a chance to talk about water lines and stuff all tomorrow.
That's good.
Yeah, this is by no means a one meeting plan or recommendation, because there's so many moving parts. And yes, they've been working. Yes, they've been doing fire breaks, but as things move and people build or add on, or there's an accessory structure that's closer that wasn't there before, this is a constant survey tool, just like your flooding is. Just like we update flood maps and we get elevation certificates, this should be updated just as often.
And maybe we could do this real quick. What if we came up with just a list of things that you guys think should be in the plan, and then we could come, or maybe they're already in the plan, maybe need to be updated, and we can come back with that kind of information.
Could we do, like, could we quickly just look at the plan, like, and any other important, like, pressing parts of the plan? Like, the risks seem really important, and we already looked at the goals. Is there more, like, detailed stuff that we should look at before we come up with a list? Like, I didn't really look at the surveys, so I'm not sure what else is included. Like, we'll have to update, like, the fire stations and things like that.
Yeah,
well,
so we can kind of go over.
I would say if that's a feeling of the committee that most folks didn't give it the attention that it needed, it probably shouldn't be discussed at this meeting then, because it really needs good attention.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we can discuss it and come back at the next meeting with our thoughts. I don't know if anyone else had a chance to review it. Catherine, it sounded like you did.
I had a chance to go through some of it. I would like to read it more thoroughly. But one thing I would really like to do that I feel like would not be a waste of our time is to go through the things that were supposed to be done and just find out if they were actually done. Because that to me gives me a starting point where I know, has it been done, but it needs to be done again? Did it not get done, or is it complete? That would help me. And I think that that kind of seems to begin, I suppose, at priority setting on page 16.
Mhm.
And I don't, if others disagree with me, I will be happy to hear your perspective, but I just thought at least, like, I don't know what's been done. So it all seems like something that needs to be looked at, where maybe that kind of helps us get through some parts of it.
I mean, that sounds like a good approach to me. Can we start there? Can we go through the objectives?
So yeah, so the first goal is to reduce the wildland fire risk to lives and property. And so one of the objectives is the education program.
I just want to say that I reviewed the Firewise brochures that Travis County puts out, and although it might seem that Firewise is in direct competition with wanting to preserve trees, it is most definitely not. There are best practices, and we should definitely be advising homeowners on best practices, like the zones around your house. It might be really helpful to kind of re-examine our funding on educating the citizens, and what type of information we want to put out. Also, if it has to do with trees that are really, really close to your house, or fencing that creates a line of fire directly to the side of your house, they call it like a ladder or something. We might want to advise people who are like getting ready to build, or, you know, like getting ready to build a fence or something like that, like just overall best practices. And putting together, you know, in addition to what we already have from the Travis County, like Sunset Valley best practices.
I'm assuming all of that would be like silver or gold budget, right? Like we don't have the power to do it now, like, but that would be a goal for the future.
I think everybody is pretty much agreed that Firewise is up there.
Okay, so education too.
Yeah, I'd like to take Lisa's comments about host an annual educational event and take that a step further and say best practices.
Mhm.
Well, and it does say in the tactics to utilize the city newsletter and website. And I see somebody just sent out a new online city newsletter. So perhaps over the next months, August and September, in our really dry months, we should be putting that material in the new newsletter.
Mhm.
I hear you loud and clear.
Well, that doesn't really, well, it costs staff time, but.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't need to be put into an event. We can do, you know, flyering of the neighborhood and help people identify. We could have volunteers helping people identify problematic areas on their property. And, you know, it's great to have a brush pile to attract lizards and everything, but you might want to move it further away from your house, that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, maybe we could talk about that with Nature Watch.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that there's a program that the Forest Service does for like it's they train you to do the like a wildfire home like hazard mitigation zone assessment, and it's like a citizen academy type thing, and it's a really good program, and it teaches you a lot about fire behavior. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think Bruce Smith may have gone through that program, so he may be, besides myself, the only person who went through that program back in 2011. And it would actually be something that would be really cool if we could get like a group from Nature Watch to, you know, go through that. And we can see if they have it available like virtually at this point in time.
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
If we could put together that flyer and then just say like, we want to gauge community interest in on-site identifying potential issues, and, you know, an email, whether it's, you know, Carolyn or someone at City Hall to coordinate that, and then at least just kind of get a roster going of interested citizens.
Carolyn, doesn't Firewise have a lot of educational materials already prepared and some webinars that people can?
Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, they're really
Yeah,
great.
there's a lot of stuff available.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, can we do
No.
And Catherine, what were you saying? You were saying you had someone come to your house to go through the risk factors in person. Was that through the city of Sunset Valley or?
Yeah, it was something we signed up for. I think after maybe the open house spring event or one of those events where you could have someone come. I was wondering if that's what you guys were talking about.
Yes, and I think actually I want to say the SARS group may have been certified at one time to do it as well. So we may be able to reach back out to them and see if any of those individuals are still with SARS.
What does SARS stand for?
The search and rescue. It's like the Citizens Search and Rescue Group.
Cool.
And maybe we could coordinate with the rekindling of the Neighborhood Watch program and have the Neighborhood Watch program help identify potential fire hazards. Like, hey, there's this dead tree that's leaning on a wire over here, and if that wire falls down into this grassy field, it's going to ignite a fire. You know, like having them go through the training, like anyone who volunteers on the Neighborhood Watch would be really helpful.
I was just going to make a comment that, you know, as we do go through this, if we make changes, that I do think we need to have things that are a little bit more measurable or have, you know, like a specific once a year. So host an annual educational event is really helpful because we know that we should be doing that every single year. And, you know, thinking about what we mentioned about like updating residents who might need assistance in case of a fire, like how often we need to do each of these things so that we can kind of check them off our list each year or 2 years or whatever.
And then do we typically do, like, I know for the Public Works open house, there's probably a booth with Firewise information, but are there educational events beyond that that we've been doing?
No, we usually, they may have something out at National Night Out, but generally Public Works open house is when we ask the firefighters to come, and we usually ask the Wildland group to come. And otherwise, the other educational item has usually been through the elementary school with the calendar program.
Yes, I'm the mother of an award-winning calendar entry. I knew that well. So Lisa was asking if we should do like a Zoom call with the police department. Like, is this like a joint conversation we should be having with Public Works and PD after everyone's had a chance to review it?
I meant the fire department chief of
did I misread it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that because they already have all the materials, I recently did a bird watching Zoom class, and they could do a slideshow, and we could have a lot of participants that could just stay at home and watch it, and that way we could get people's interest peaked. It's really low amount of energy to just sign up for an online conference, and we could put it out with the newsletter and say, if anybody would like to register for our Firewise conference on Zoom, it's going to be maybe 2 months from now or whatever, or maybe even sooner. We could arrange it because it's fire season. I don't know, just a thought.
I think not just the fire department, but McComas inspections too. Today I had a resident ask me about an emergency generator. And generators aren't generally governed in the building code. However, there are certain things that you want to take into account. How far you set it back from your property when you start it. It's not just for carbon monoxide things, but also because it can spark a fire. So the walkthrough, the building code, the fire department, all very, very critical components. And then water and looping, it's not just for pressure, it's water quality. I mean, this, like I said, this is more than a one meeting kind of conversation.
Okay. Can we keep going through the objectives? Like especially
Sure.
things like the fire breaks and stuff that we would have no idea.
Yeah, so the next one is basically the mitigation on the public lands. Let me go down real quick. Because the third objective is kind of going back to that building materials and education item. But yeah, so this is the fire breaks and everything that we do in the nature areas.
So Catherine, is this kind of what you were talking about when you were wondering what's been done?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, like going through a lot of those where they needed like a brush truck, accessible route, those kind of things. I was curious if they ever got completed.
Yes, most of these have all, in the green spaces, most of these, the access areas and the shaded fire breaks, all of these have been completed. They do have to be maintained. So because it is living matter, everything continues to grow. So we still have to go in and we kind of alternate which years we're doing which areas so that it kind of rotates so that everything is kind of upkept over time. But yeah, South Hills, the fire break is there, the shaded fire break is there, the access down the trail is there. Gaines Greenbelt because it's that's an interesting situation over there because it is critical habitat, so it has to maintain pretty close to what it is now. We can't do any kind of fuel reduction in that area that we would do like with ash juniper. That one is pretty much the recommendation there is to make sure those homes, especially over in Barton View, increase the defensible space around their home. Indian grass, we mow Indian grass with seasonal mowing to reduce fuel loads. That's pretty much done every year. It is that's more of a mowing thing as we track mow every year to do that. Cougar Creek Greenbelt, similar kind of situation, seasonal mowing. And any brush control just to kind of keep it more, because it's naturally going to be a more savanna kind of like area, just keeping brush and stuff from kind of going out of control. And Sunset Valley Nature Area, that's the largest area, so there are a couple of fire breaks on there. I think it was either late last year or early this year, we were out doing some work in that on the fire break that backs up to houses along Lovegrass. That was the one we worked on, the last one we worked on. So those have been done, and we continue to maintain those fire breaks.
Thanks, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
So do we need to add into this document the frequency that those things are done? Do we need that kind of specifics? I'm not sure.
My suggestion would be that yes, because as we do, right now it's hard for me to wrap my head around with budget and finance committee. I mean, you hear Carolyn saying, oh, I think it was last month or last year, nothing against Carolyn, but without me having a frequency to say this is how much staff I need for this amount of money is very hard to defend. I would like it on a regular schedule. And that's what I've asked our contract, Texas State, to give me what it would be on a regular schedule. And so I will need to compare staffing as well on that same regular schedule. Out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. I can't just say, oh, well, we mow the open spaces, because it's like, okay, well, how often? When?
Yeah.
How much?
It seems like that could be like an appendix or something in here that you could update as you update the plan.
Perfect.
Lisa, your hand is still raised. Did we already talk about what you wanted to talk about?
My hand is just raised all the time because I want to talk all the time. That's just a problem I have. Sorry.
You're fine. I didn't want to miss what you were saying.
I'll do it. Wait. Well, there we go. I believe they call it diarrhea of the mouth.
No, know, we're having lots of good conversations. So are people getting advised when they apply for construction permits with the city?
I was not. I was told that just to do my best to just keep all the trees, no matter where they were located or what type they were. So that's what I did. But I wasn't told like you should try to remove the brush that's close to your house or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of those fine, super, super fine balances in the code. Like I said, generators aren't addressed in the building code, but they're definitely a fire hazard. So we would do a local amendment. We have water quality standards we're trying to do our best to protect, but it's clearly in conflict with some of our Firewise stuff. We have, you know, things that we want to keep in natural habitat, but we have some species here that, you know, shouldn't be and are kindling for other things. So it's a good deep scrub that we're doing, and hopefully we'll set it to a point where we're scrubbing like that frequently.
Do we need to add, like the way Carolyn, you're making comments right now, like do we need to add a comment to talk about like things like emergency generators and things that are pretty important to this plan but aren't specifically covered by it or kind of fall outside all of our plans? I don't know what other things would be under that umbrella.
I would say touch the building code. I would also say update the our fire code. I mean, we sort of get away with things by saying, oh, well, Austin adopted the NFPA 2015, so we follow Austin, and but every code has a local flavor, every single code, and it should address the community. And if we have specific geography, geology, or a community makeup, then we need to be addressing all of our codes.
Okay.
Our code is very different than Austin.
Yeah, that's the plumbing code, because that's where you get gas, right? That's what your building code, right? Because also to address things like spacing. The fire code to address things like generators and other flammables. I mean, I can go on and on. It's crazy, but it's just so we continue to have conflict.
And
thanks for keeping that.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I was saying thanks for keeping an eye on that, because there are it is a ton of conflicting information. Like the Firewise stuff is different from the like I had a native tree list, and I had a Firewise list, and then I had a list that was for drought. And I could only find like maybe 3 things that, as far as the large trees or whatever, that met the criteria for all 3. Like it's like tons of, like you need a degree or you need like a lawyer to review it all. And I just I want to do the best thing for the community and the neighborhood, but it's really hard to parse through all the info.
That's a good idea for a newsletter or something in the future. Like recommending some species on all those lists.
You forgot to add the tree purchase thing when we have things that are on sale, so everybody wants them because they're pretty and they're on sale, but they're not good for us.
Yeah, or they're not drought protection or whatever.
They're super flammable.
Bug infestation or yeah, it's really complicated. I think one of the best things we can do to protect our greenbelt is to prevent the encampments in there, because it seems like that's one of the, well, when I lived in Barton Hills and we had a greenbelt right near there, that's the only time we saw fire trucks when there were fires in the greenbelt, because in the winter it gets cold and there's little fires that start, and it is horrible. Like we've had some pretty big scares. And I think that a loose cigarette butt that hasn't been put out properly in one of these encampments could be like devastating.
That seems like it's a big issue.
It's the biggest, I mean, to me, it's like, I remember like the fire trucks coming. I lived right at the Gustford Park entrance. It's like, oh my gosh, another fire. Oh my gosh, another fire. Okay, brace yourself. And there's fires that are lit to cook food too. So it's not just in the cold months.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost 8. Carolyn, are there more aspects of the plan we should touch on, or should we just plan to review this again before our meeting and like send you our comments? Or are there things we need to touch on before we move on?
I think that we've got a lot here that you guys kind of talked about. I think, next time for the next meeting, having everybody having a chance to kind of review this further and go from there would be helpful. And we can have some more answers for some of the other items.
Okay.
So do we need to make an action item that every member of the committee needs to read this before the next meeting? And is there anything specific we need to be kind of looking for or thinking about as we read it for our next meeting?
I would say really take a good look around Sunset Valley. I would say while you're on your walks, while you're driving around, while you're out shopping, really take a good look and pay attention to anything that really could be considered kindling, and just have an overall awareness of your surroundings. And chances are, with a new set of eyes, new perspective on everything that we talked about today, chances are you guys are going to say, hey, did you address this? And we should be able to tell you yes or no, or that's a great idea. We hadn't even thought of that.
But it sounds like it would be great if everybody on the committee could review the plan before our next meeting. And look at it with those eyes, like Sylvia was saying.
I think it might also be a good idea to, as you review it and come up with your list of questions or suggestions, to send those to Carolyn ahead of time so that perhaps they can be compiled for us all to look at the next meeting. Save a little time.
And then is there, like, Sylvia, were you also saying that we have a fire code that ties into it?
Yes.
Is that something we need to review as part of the plan, or?
No, you guys can simply ask the questions. I'm not asking you guys to go to go review any of the building codes or the fire codes. You're welcome to. The books are in my office, but no.
Okay. Okay, so we'll just kind of, cool. Okay, and we'll just make sure we include it on the next agenda and actually take action on it then. All right, so Nature Watch.
So this is something the committee has discussed for it seems like a while. And I thought we could kind of start formalizing what it is you see Nature Watch as, and what it is, what kind of training, what kind of requirements, what the goals are, and if anybody's interested in being kind of like those volunteer coordinators for Nature Watch.
So can you tell us a little bit about the history of Nature Watch? Like Nature Watch has kind of existed before in Sunset Valley, right? Or something like it.
Yes, Nature Watch used to be conservation rangers, and that's what I attached was the conservation ranger kind of training PowerPoint that we used before. And so it was a citizen group that would come out, and Helen Calvi could give you even more information. She was there, I think, when it was developed, and give you some more information about Nature Watch. But it was, conservation rangers, citizen group, they would have training. They would go out into the green spaces and do work and, report things and pick up litter and that kind of stuff in that area. Originally, it was for access to the South Hills Conservation Area. That was the only way to get in there, was to be a conservation ranger. That all kind of evolved over the years. But I don't know if Helen wants to share anything else.
Can I talk?
Yeah.
Oh, am I not muted?
No, you're not muted.
All this time I've been talking? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. No, what Carolyn said is right on. It never really did work as well as we were hoping. We had to have, 4 hours of training, Carolyn?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Right, and we did have a group that did that, and we functioned well for a while, but then it kind of didn't fall apart. But we stopped doing the trainings, or people didn't show up or something, and it just kind of drifted away. But I would love to see it come back. And I've been thinking about this. It doesn't have to be quite as extensive as we had planned for it in the past, because it, as I said, it just didn't go. And Carolyn has a lot on her plate. So in the past, she was the one who held what was held together. She did hold it together. And I don't think it was fair for us to put that on her this time. So I think if we could solicit a few people, maybe for starters, 6 people or something, and really talk about what would be reasonable and what we could expect from volunteers. We found that our original volunteers we had, Carolyn, do you remember our badges?
The badges that were the size of a sheet of paper?
Yeah, 8.5 and 11 sheet of paper.
I want to do a badge.
And we were supposed to have a weird next to something, just a piece of paper. And I think that with those careful thought and planning, we could make this a really good group that would be very cohesive, maybe split it up into smaller groups where folks would take responsibility in their neighborhoods, like maybe Oakdale, and could kind of keep watch over the South Hills. Also, there are residents along the South Hills on the south side. There are at least 3 there whom I've met just walking around. They're very, very interested in being a part of the group, so I would not want to restrict this just to Sunset Valley residents, because a lot of people enjoy our green space. And those folks over there are the ones who are going to be impacted by a wildfire on the South Hills. And they're also the ones who go in and pick up the litter and take care of things. Well, Carolyn, Jeff. So I think that they should be allowed to be a part of the group that goes to training. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Except that, because now that I know I can talk, be careful. I think getting a small group together, however that can be done, and kind of doing a planning session. When we do it in these large groups, like we were doing just a few minutes ago, it seems like there's a lot of talk, but it's really hard to concentrate on or focus on anything that can definitively make some leeway into what we want, like in a wildfire plan. So perhaps if some folks would get in touch with Carolyn and say they're interested, and then maybe we could just set up a Zoom meeting or something and just try to get something going with the interest, and then figure out what's the next step.
It sounds like we've talked about some things that we could really use volunteers for. Like, Catherine, you were talking about Adopt a Tree, how maybe that could be like a volunteer activity that we kind of take over. I mean, we talked about like the need for someone to help figure out like fire-wise, drought-tolerant native species that would be good for Sunset Valley. And I was thinking, like, it seems like a lot of the things on this purpose list, like, have to do with plants. Maybe we could talk to, like, I don't know if there are master gardeners in the city, or we could talk to people associated with the community garden. Maybe we could round up a couple of people to participate, or like recruit.
And I would also say that eventually the Violet Crown Trail will be coming through, and it's always been the discussion that Sunset Valley residents would help kind of be the, guardians and stewards of the Sunset Valley kind of official entry into the Violet Crown Trail.
When is that happening, Carol? I know this is off subject, but they're doing everything south of us and everything north of us is done, and we seem to be the chunk that's the piece that's not happening.
It should happen hopefully next year. Austin, there was a lot of hoops they had to jump through for TxDOT, so they ran into a few first they had a funding issue, they got the funding in place, and then they ran into a lot of issues with TxDOT, and they should actually be pretty much all squared away to go to bids pretty soon.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
I had a couple of ideas about this program. If, like Helen was saying, there was a small group interested in participating at the beginning, it might be nice, to determine how frequently you might try to get out to look for things, and then have kind of a specific objective each, say, week or something like that, that you're on the trails looking for something specific or observing specific things, so that there's almost like a mission each time you go out, and then a way to kind of report anything back on that specific topic. And maybe, every 4 weeks that mission is litter pickup or something like that. But, another week it could be, let's keep our eyes open for evidence of oak wilt, or let's keep our eyes open for, what animals we see while we're out. And my other thought was that it would be really easy to bring local kids in our community into this, and many of us are going to be homeschooling for God knows how long, and for our kids to have a mission of their own.
Where I like that too.
And that wouldn't need to be coordinated necessarily with the adult group, but I think it could be a fun way if any parents who are interested, we could shoot something out each week and say, this week you're looking for this, and if you want to draw a picture of what you see, or write something about what you did, and
let's put it in the newsletter.
Yeah. I think it would be really easy to incorporate kids, which gets families out on the trails even more too, and more eyes on things.
Yeah. I mean, I would love that, or I would love it at least to be family welcoming. It doesn't have to be just, it'd be a mix of everybody. Do we want to have like a breakout session? Like, who's interested?
Can I just say, I just put together the plan for the neighborhood watch for the safety committee, because I'm on the safety committee, and I'd be happy to share that PDF document. I've also designed a logo that we may be budget depending, creating a sign, and it's an owl with really big eyes. And it says, "We are watching you, City of Sunset Valley Neighborhood Watch." And, I found it. It was like a free clip art, and it looks really, really eye-catching. And I think that fresh sign that this owl could work as the Nature Watch too. And you could also do another couple like slogans, like whatever, pack it in, pack it out, or walk only on the trails, don't walk on the walk on the dirt and the paths, not the green spaces. Those kind of reminders, if you wanted to create little signs, and then just have a little bit more information on them for the trails. It might be nice.
Sure. I mean, are you interested in like being part of a breakout group and talking about it in more detail, or do you just want to
I'll be happy to share all the work that I've
Sure.
done for safety committee, and I'd be happy to redesign the sign if you want to have some consistent branding. If you're interested, if it fits your needs.
Okay. Okay. And Neshka, were you raising your hand?
Sorry. Yes, I just wanted to say, at first I was thinking, oh, you know, we could do stuff that would parallel what sometimes is already being done, like like a component like the Adopt a Tree or the Stars Night or something that's already in the Public Works plan, and we just add kind of a conservation rangers kind of component to it. But I really loved Catherine's idea because all of that seems like it'll bring, it doesn't seem like it's COVID-19 friendly, but this is totally like the teddy bear walks and all that kind of stuff. Like it's really COVID-19 friendly. I think it's something that could really be really nice for right now. One question that I had was, it says that adoption requires council adoption. Is there still anything we need from council to go ahead and work on it? Or is it just like if council needs to give us money, or at this point, are we free to work on it? How does this work?
I don't think it looks like anything except their blessings, because they're so consumed right now with our budget and the uncertainty of the future. I don't want to ask them for anything, even Carolyn's time. I think for the initial efforts, maybe we could just do those breakout groups if you're interested in something particular, and just several of us get together and work on a component of Nature Watch and then present it, and then we could give it to the council. And if we can design it in such a way that it doesn't cost the city any money, we can have, I'm a biologist by trade, et cetera. So I would love to be a part of the painting of the native trees and habitat and whatnot. So we could have Zoom meetings, we could have Zoom seminars or something, or training classes, and I think we could pretty much do it ourselves. We need the blessing of the council. I think having a sign or some kind of, what do you call them, your owl, have something that we can have, and maybe we could even design a t-shirt or something instead of the city paying for them like they used to, that we just say, okay, just go over to our local t-shirt shop in Sunset Valley there, and they'll have it designed. You get your own t-shirt as part of this group. Lots of things we can do ourselves without any money.
Like my understanding, sorry, Helen, my understanding was we've already went through whatever steps we had to do to approve this and create it and change the name like a long time ago. It's just been latent because we haven't acted on it. I mean, Carolyn, is that right? Like, I mean, I don't think we need any approval to do anything, right?
Well, we have to. We don't have a budget, right? For a budget.
No, there's no budget right now, and so I don't think we've actually gotten a council blessing on changing the name from Conservation Rangers to Nature Watch, and so I think finally, coming to council and just saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is our volunteer group, and this is how we'd like to, proceed as an officially recognized organization within Sunset Valley, I guess.
Okay.
We were about getting some volunteer coordinators, and I would be happy to coordinate the ecological part of it. Somebody else could volunteer to do the Firewise, so that we know what we're going to ask people to focus on when they actually go back down, and have the information from. I can see Zoe.
I'm just going to say, I think maybe this is something we should do in a breakout session. This is a little detailed. I don't know who would be interested in meeting to talk about this.
Well, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
And Carolyn needs to, if Carolyn has the time, she does need to coordinate us overall, because she's the liaison. But I don't want to take up her time.
Carolyn, What should your role be in like the early planning stages?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, help you guys out and we can do that where I can help you guys out, get that ready, because I think in the end, what will happen is we'll have hopefully a good volunteer force who can take over a few of these things and help with some of the green spaces and help with some of the education programs.
And I think it would be very crucial to make sure the council knows that we're not going to go in there and start cutting down invasives without their permission or some oversight by someone who knows what they're doing. We had a resident who took it upon himself to go out and just cut down juniper trees because I guess he didn't like them. And you just go in and do that just because you think a juniper is not a good tree. It's actually a great habitat tree. So we need to educate people and have the city's permission to go in an area and do certain things, but not do it on our own.
Okay.
Can I propose something?
Yeah.
If Carolyn could give a tiny bit of her time just to make a list of what activities would be helpful to her for this group to do, and how any information that needed to be given back to Public Works, how we could do that in the best way to take the least of her time, then I would be more than happy to join a breakout group and discuss further once we have that list from her of, how this group can most benefit the city and take some burden off of them.
Carolyn.
Okay, I'm making a note of that. So there's a list of activities and things that
like ways we could support the staff, right, Catherine? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Right.
Like a niche.
I think, the staff are the best people to tell us how we can help them.
Right.
Okay.
And then, so it looks like Helen, Catherine, and I are we going to be like the breakout group? If I've missed anyone, let me know. You can like raise your hand but we could have a meeting and kind of plan things out a little bit more. Maybe go through the slides that Carolyn posted and see like what we'd want to keep or what we'd want to change.
Yeah, if you guys want to send me those edits and stuff, I'd be happy to take a look at the presentation materials and refine them based on your copy. I have no problem volunteering for that. It's a bit overextended right now with my other stuff. But and I'd be happy to add to the copy some of the Firewise stuff since I've already done a lot of research on that. So I can take that off your plate if you want that to be a part of your. So the way that we did the safety, the neighborhood watch at the safety committee was create the slideshow deck presentation and then to have a action item for city council to vote on. So you guys are gonna take that deck, refine it, add some ideas to it, plug in some copy and a little bit more about the Firewise stuff or whatever. I'd be happy to take a shot at finding that for you, and then you can have Karen maybe sponsor an agenda item.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we can try to have a breakout meeting.
Did Sylvia put that up? Oh, Carolyn put that up.
That's a cute owl.
There's a reason that I did that, and that's because people respond. There's psychological component to large eyes. And so, and the Chief Carter told me that that's actually a thing that they do as well. So I thought it was a lot better than that creepy guy that looks like he's getting ready to sell you a watch behind it or flash you or something for the neighborhood watch. It's like an eye, like a eye guy.
Owl's better. Okay, Helen and Catherine, I can contact you guys offline. Carolyn, would you want to be a part of like a brainstorming meeting, or should we just contact you like when you
Sure, I can be. Yeah, I can be part of a brainstorming meeting, and I'll have that kind of for you guys so that you guys have that. So what I have down, I think, let me share my screen real quick. Oh, I think you got it. So you guys have discussed the Nature Watch ideas, and we'll return at the next meeting with, is that about right, at the next meeting?
I think so. When is our next meeting? Are we
Well,
going
we'll
to
have to discuss that.
Okay.
We'll have to discuss that and come up with the next meeting date, since everything kind of has moved a little bit.
Okay.
And finance may be meeting next week, so.
Okay. I can't remember like about the deadline for the end of electronic meetings. Did it get shifted, or are we still going to be talking about a real life meeting?
I think everything's still online until the 15th, and I guess we'll just have to see if everything gets extended again on the 15th of August.
Okay.
So then I put down for next meeting steps that Helen, Catherine, and Zoe will work on Nature Watch planning and present it to the full committee. Lisa, you're going to be working on like the presentation kind of components for Nature Watch and Firewise?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can make an edit if you want to share that existing file that you have, or what is it exist in right now?
It's in PowerPoint.
So yeah, I mean, I can just cut and paste from that because I'm on a Mac. I don't have that, but I'll be able to open it in my stuff and like put a refinement pass on it and add some whatever that you guys just send me the copy and I'll plug it in.
Okay.
Okay, and is our last item the calendar? Or wait, is there?
Yes, the last item is the calendar, and I did not update this calendar because everything's kind of shifted. So let me pull that up real quick.
Okay.
So I wanted to see if there were certain things, let me share this real quick. If there were certain things you guys wanted to just cross off of the calendar for now and maybe move down to the bottom of the calendar. So for example, green business was defunded, so maybe move that to the bottom of the calendar.
Sounds good.
And then just kind of go through this and you guys tell me what you see the committee working on in this, now through the end of the year, basically.
I know rebates has come up a bunch.
So rebates, unless they go into the silver budget, rebates aren't really a question at this point in time.
Okay, so we can't really discuss it unless it's leading to a council action.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
There's no rebates in the bronze budget, basically.
Okay. So I mean, Violet Crown Trail, it sounds like that's not happening until next year.
Yes, it won't happen until next year.
Yeah, okay.
What I don't see on here are our legislative action item, which was to have a vote for the sale of public lands.
Okay.
We're talking about like the changes to the code and stuff.
That is something we discussed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that seemed like it was a focus for a couple meetings and then it went away. And I think we definitely want to do something with the uplands, and it would be nice to be able to have like a community vote on that when the time comes. So let's just say we get like 4 different plans from different developers on something to do with the uplands. It'd be great to be able to have a citizen vote before we sell the land to a specific developer or make it into whatever idea,
Are we talking about selling the lands?
Lisa,
I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying it could be a future where we would want to make sure that publicly held lands could have a vote.
Sure.
I mean, just a thought.
They're appraising all the public lands are being appraised, and some of that come in on the uplands, and it hasn't yet. That's what Sylvia said. But I think that when you get different proposals for the uplands and ask people to vote on it, we did that in the past, and it just created this horrendous problem. And
Right,
since
that's why it's just been there.
went away. If anybody tries to do anything with that, I think if we had a referendum, I think it should be really simple, like either we develop it or we don't, and then define what development is, and let people say we do want to, and then go forward. It just hasn't worked in the past. It may be different. We have a whole new set of residents here, but that's something so easily. Put out different kinds of information to influence the voters, and I think it'd be really hard to get a referendum like that on a ballot, and even so, it would be non-binding.
Yeah.
I don't know how you binding.
Sarah, do you have something?
Well, can I just make a point that it's almost time to be finishing up? So can we, since we all clearly want to talk about the uplands probably more, make sure that it's something that's on our calendar for the upcoming months, and we might have more information after the appraisals come back? Sorry, I'm not trying to rush, but
No. Yeah,
we'll never finish talking about it tonight. If we can just highlight that as one of the issues that we want to keep on our calendar for the upcoming months.
And Sarah, did you have something?
Oh, yes. I agree with the time, but also with the need to discuss the uplands. I really like Helen's point about how we don't want to just go down like a rabbit hole of way too much democracy around.
We've already done that as a community, I think. Can we?
Yeah, so I think if it's not required to get anybody to vote on anything, then we would not want to vote on anything.
Well, just to be clear, we also talked about green tax purchased land having an extra layer of protection. So this is something that we did discuss as a committee, and it seemed like people were pretty excited about it. And this is not just about uplands. This is about green tax purchased land and our level of having another layer to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
But we possibly need to add that as an item on here because I didn't see that. Is that correct?
Is that separate from the park ordinance? Is that really the same?
No, it's having to do with zoning and the parks and those certain types of public lands. There are elements in the government code that require them to, if the city decides to sell anything that's in that park land category, it requires a referendum by the residents to be able to sell public land. Some of the land that falls under a chapter in the wildlife code, and some of it falls into local government code. So that is something we discussed. I will check with Sylvia and see where that ended up with Roxy, the new city attorney, and see if she's reviewed that yet. She was going to look at those different sections of the code and look at our existing zoning ordinances and see what changes we would need to make that actually apply. And make that, because I think that was always the intention with the way the city was, when we did those zoning changes years ago, to be part of that, kind of, to have the more protected areas like the South Hills to have higher levels of protection. And so it's just making the actual intent that the residents had years ago match up to and give it that extra level of protection it was supposed to have.
Okay. Can we go through the list and talk about like what is still potential? Like a lot of these things it seems like are kind of shelved anyway. Like so rebates. Is there stuff we need to do on open space management?
Well, that's another one that should be reviewed periodically, and we had made it through a good portion of that already. So it may be something that we're looking at. I'm going to start changing these dates over to like a 2020. It may be something we're looking at more October, November on that. But moving some of it into that category.
Okay.
And I'll clean this up. So water conservation program planning. That may be a 2021 project instead.
Okay.
Upland planning, I put it back on the calendar for August and September. I took urban forestry management plan off. I wouldn't recommend doing that until after we get done with maybe open space management, if we're going to be able to review that that plan.
Okay.
Same thing with the pollution mitigation manual. So kind of moving these priorities down, taking them off, unless anybody is like, really, I want to do that now. Sound pollution, bike lanes. I would say at this point, kicking that this committee has already made recommendations on bike lanes, saying yes, we should have some sort of bike lanes. I think that's really should be kicked over to the Public Works Committee.
I thought, like, did it get hung up at public safety or something?
I don't remember. Lisa, do you know if they've done anything on public safety?
I don't
with bike lanes?
I don't think so. No, there was some talk about scooters a while back, but no, nothing about bike lanes.
I think this one, yeah, I think you guys have already made your recommendations. I think this one, safety and public works, because they're both where it got hung up, I think.
Okay.
I'm going to take the environmental events off for now.
Okay.
Since everything's kind of virtual.
Yeah.
34 Reese, I can take that off the committee's work plan for now as well. There was a discussion for prairie restoration on Oakdale.
Yeah.
Is that something that Nature Watch could do?
Yeah, that's what I would say. Let's talk about that with Nature Watch.
Okay.
Adventure Playground, kind of took it off for now as well. I'll just move these down to the bottom of the list, kind of things that we've talked about.
Okay.
So there is still, I think, interest in Homestead Park.
Yeah.
And I think that may actually be something for the committee to discuss. I don't know if they want to discuss that in addition to the uplands, or to save that for September.
Carolyn, I don't think that it got rated high on the public works. Quite honestly, for the rest of this fiscal year, it might be good to really dig into the wildfire protection plan and get the Nature Watch program up.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is Homestead Park? I'm not familiar with that.
Homestead Park is the area between La Madeline and the docks.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
And it was all part of a kind of doing a master plan kind of project through that area and really creating an interconnected kind of green space, basically, and connecting the La Madeline and docks and that shopping center, and
Yeah, no, I remember the project now. I just wasn't familiar with the name of Homestead. It seems like an odd name. That's all.
It's because it's a Homestead shopping center.
I think we were calling it Upper Cougar Creek before, Helen.
Okay, that helps. Yeah, and all that land is all disturbed land. All that is fill that was brought in there. That used to be a creek, and now it's not.
Yeah.
So that has a whole.
Maybe they can combine the two names so that. I mean, isn't it essentially one and the same, Carolyn?
Yeah, Upper Cougar Creek and Homestead Park, they're in the same area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same space.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we're gonna kind of readdress that park ordinance, get that information back for you guys, community wildfire, and basically Nature Watch.
Mm-hmm.
We'll redo this calendar to match up with what's going to happen for the rest of the year. And so the last thing I have a question about is when the committee wants to meet next, because technically our next meeting would be next Thursday, but I believe Budget and Finance, I don't know if they're meeting or not. And I don't know if that's probably too soon for the items you guys are working on.
Do we want to just meet at the beginning of September? Like, I don't know when the budget will be done, if we'll still have to bump our meeting in September, or if they'll be like wrapped up by then.
I think it should be wrapped up, at least budget and finance portion of it, and maybe on Thursdays would be the part that should be wrapped up in the next, either this week or next week, depending on what happens at this week's meeting.
Oh, okay.
So I
That's
think
good.
if you guys want to, go ahead and just hit that first Thursday in September and go back to a regular schedule, we should hopefully be able to do a regular meeting schedule in September.
Does that work for you guys?
Just FYI, the budget hearing, the public hearing on the budget scheduled for September 1st. And
Okay.
the approval of the budget is finalized on the 15th of
Okay.
September. The
Thank
mayor
you.
files her budget on August 12th.
All right. Thanks, Karen. That's good information. So it sounds like we're just going to meet that first Thursday in September, unless something comes up before then.
So, Karen, last city council meeting, there was current and future land use maps issue came up. I know environmental and planning has done a lot of work historically on that. Is that all going to be taken into consideration going forward? The new, I don't know, there's going to be like a new study done or something?
No. I mean, the maps came up when we were looking at the zoning change for the Stearns Lane. So I don't think we're going to be changing them anytime before the end of this budget process.
It was something about CIP and LUA public, and then you were going to get public input.
Capital improvement projects is having having them spelled out separately, the capital improvement projects.
Okay. And how would that affect all the work in the past that this group has done on the planning side of things?
I don't think it will.
No?
Well, it's basically taking all those projects and putting them on a list and a timetable, if I'm remembering correctly.
All right, I'm sorry. There's just a lot of information at all times. It seemed like it was relevant.
No, I think it all tied in. It also ties into the whole issue about impact fees and where the land map use is and where the capital improvement projects are and what impact any development or redevelopment might have on the infrastructure. But we didn't make any motion to redo the land development maps at this time.
So that's just gauging how much of a drain it would be on public resources.
Right. We had to return the mitigation fee that was assessed on the Homestead Barn event center. And the question came up about whether or not that was actually an impact fee, and we need to have an ordinance about when we assess impact fees and how we utilize them, because we don't have the ordinance on that. So we'll be working on that.
Okay. Are we ready to adjourn the meeting? Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Vote in your chat box. Aye.
does seem like we can't really do too much in this year, in 2020, just because of all the COVID and budget
Yeah.
restrictions.
It seems like this is a good time to review things and make plans. And like it feels like that's how we should be using our time, like getting Nature Watch up and maybe thinking about things we can put in the newsletter and things we can do to recruit other people to volunteer. But it doesn't seem like it's a good time to do much more
It's
than
hard not to want to do like some sort of farm to table restaurant / little thing up in the uplands and have people come in and give proposals and
Right, yeah.
everything that's here in our neighborhood has become so much more important to me right now.
Oh yeah.
I think Zoe's got a good point, though, for the rest of this fiscal year at least, and probably into the first quarter of next year. I think looking at things that don't have a budget request or heavy staff time would be much appreciated.
Or I mean, maybe there's stuff we can do to plan for the uplands, and like it feels like this is kind of a quiet time. Like maybe it's time to do more research or get more
Well, I
data
noticed
to make it